Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Jeune. It is Thursday, January 11th. Gotta have my guy, Greg Pennamon, here with me. And we are live. We've resolved some of our issues. We're live again. Greg, how you doing? Good to see you. How's it feel to be live again?
Doing well. Definitely great to be live. Glad the season is over. Ready for some very meaningful games, of playoff games. Matchups will be excellent. Make some money hopefully in these games leading up to the Super Bowl and the Super Bowl. So hope we have a great time. This is definitely an amazing time for football.
Absolutely an amazing time for football. You gotta love playoff football. I mean, as fans of two New York teams that reside in New Jersey, we don't really know what playoff football is like these days. I mean, you guys made the playoff. The Giants made the playoffs last year, so
yeah, got a playoff win. So that was cool.
Maybe I speak for myself as the Jets fan over here, but we've got some great playoff games. I mean, I'm really looking at that Dallas Green Bay game has all my attention. Green Bay has been hot, winning 7 of their last 8. Losing to your Giants in that one loss there. So, Greg, what playoff games are grabbing your attention right now in this first round?
Yeah, I mean, all of them are definitely very evenly matched. A lot of parity in today's NFL, but the one I'm looking at definitely is Matthew Stafford coming home, man, to Detroit, man, going against his former team that he played for. I mean, he's going to get his reception, his video played, and then give him that work. Like, it's crazy. Like, it's going to be a great matchup. I think Detroit fans put a Stafford jersey ban on the weekend. I'm not sure if that's accurate, if they're gonna but it's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Yeah, that game's got to be a great matchup. I mean, both those games take place on Sunday, so it should be a fun one.
Biggest Lions game in their history. Like,
yeah, man, absolutely. Also curious to see, and I'm glad we don't have to wait very long, CJ Stroud's first playoff appearance. I mean, you could say that the Week 18 game was essentially a playoff game for them, right? I mean, they had to win to get in, and when you have to win to get in, that's a playoff game. And he showed no signs of the moment being too big for him. Prime time. I think only had 3 incompletions in the game. I'm excited to see how Stroud, does in his first game against the resurgent Joe Flacco.
Yeah, crazy, man. I mean, doesn't matter who's on the field, who's receiving. No Tank Dell, no. Hopefully, wish we'd have got everyone healthy for the Texans, but it doesn't matter. Stroud seems to get it done with anyone on the field.
Most definitely, and it's time to recap. We're obviously looking at some of these playoffs, looking ahead to some of these playoffs. Do have to recap some of what happened in 2023 here, and some things didn't shake out the way we thought. Some things shook out exactly how we thought they would. I'm gonna start with the quarterback position here. The top 3 quarterbacks on the season in terms of points per game with a minimum of 12 games played at the quarterback position. We got the quarterback 1, Josh Allen, 2, Jalen Hurts, and 3, Lamar Jackson. I mean, Greg, the top 2, I mean, I went back and looked at my notes. I mean, this is exactly how I had them. I believe you had them flipped. But either way, everyone thought this top 2 would be some combination of Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think of these 3, I may have snuck in Mahomes in there, but these 3 guys are going to be in your top 4 or 3 every year. I think for the next coming years, and in the past, kind of that's how it's been played out. Just the rushing ability that these guys bring. You see the common denominator here, what they do with their legs here, and then Allen and Hurts, just what they do in the end zone when they get close to that goal line. it seems to be automatic. They're going to get a touchdown. So I'm glad that they came through healthy as well and did what they had to do.
Yeah, I definitely had Mahomes as number 3 in this spot. You also had him here as a number 3 quarterback in this spot as well. I mean, Lamar Jackson definitely a lot of this was done on that back half of the season, right? I mean, there were some weeks in the beginning of the year where he was definitely had some high scoring performances, but as we got later through the season, in the middle of the year, it was a bit of a low there. But he was leading people to championships on the back half of that fantasy season there. So love to see that from Lamar Jackson. I mean, Josh Allen, almost a point ahead of Jalen Hurts in terms of fantasy points per game, and then
Which
Jalen
is crazy
Hurts.
with all those picks. He was still able to do it.
Hey man, I mean, I went back, I looked at my notes from there, when we did the quarterback breakdown, and I was adamant I had Josh Allen as the number 1 guy, just purely because he's a guy who's going to throw for 4,000, potentially throw for 30 plus touchdowns, but he also has the ability to lead his team in rushing touchdowns, and that's exactly what he did here. So, Josh Allen is it's like Brett Favre meets Cam Newton, right? Like he's not going to matter, not going to care, kind of playing with a reckless abandon, disregard for his body, almost to a fault there. But from a fantasy perspective, Josh Allen's, on a different planet, him and Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I did have Lamar Jackson winning MVP though, so I think that might happen. So that's looking like he's probably the odds-on favorite right now. So that's good to see.
Well, we are going to do a full accountability episode today. So a few things that we got wrong in 23, also with some things that we got right in 2023. So, maybe you might hear that. Moving on to rounding out these top 12s on the year, Dak Prescott comes in at 4, Jordan Love 5, Brock Purdy 6, Justin Fields 7, CJ Stroud 8, Justin Herbert 9, Patrick Mahomes 10, Russell Wilson 11, and Jared Goff coming in at 12 there. Greg, does anything here stand out for you?
Definitely with the way Dak's season started for him to catapult. I mean, the first half of that season was looking real rough. They were winning games, but they weren't really relying heavily on that running game. They were relying heavily on the running game, relying on that defense early in the season, and then it took a very quick turn. I think maybe from the Chargers game on, he seemed to be kind of that number 1 quarterback in fantasy from that point on. So yeah, he definitely stand out to have a great season. Obviously Stroud, run right away. We saw it happen, but he just took off and really dominated in the season as well. So definitely those 2 guys definitely impressed me. And Goff and Russell Wilson having some bounce back season, especially Russell Wilson.
Yeah, Dak Prescott was an interesting one. Probably going to talk about that one a little bit later. I think you and I both had him in a not so favorable category coming into the season. But a lot of that had to do with, like you said, the running game, which very early on, I remember being on this show those first few weeks of the season, and we were doing a little victory lap, a little victory dance about that call, and then it just about faced, and it never came back. Jordan Love, I thought, really good season. Beginning of the year came on hot, had that stretch where Green Bay had done, really poorly. I think they were 3-6 at one point. But I remember, I went back and watched that first waiver show, Greg, and you were on Jordan Love. I don't know if it's on your list of things to talk about, but you were pretty adamant that we should be going out and getting Jordan Love right away. Justin Fields, top 7 in fantasy points per game. You love that one.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously been we've been high on Fields here. And then CJ Stroud, that's the one that'll constantly stick out to me when I look at this list, man, because he did save a lot of my teams. I mean, if you were in leagues with me, you probably didn't have CJ Stroud because he was on my team. That's probably, hint, hint, something we might talk about a little bit later in this show. But do have some guys I do want to shout out here from an honorable mention perspective. I mean, Baker Mayfield was right on the cusp of being a QB1. He was a guy that we streamed, all year, was, right behind Jared Goff in fantasy points per game. Matthew Stafford was another guy who did, was started out slow. The touchdowns weren't coming, but had some regression there, some positive touchdown regression near the end of the season. But then, some guys like Tua and Trevor Lawrence, who maybe we expected a little bit more from, probably were a little disappointing. And Sam Howell also had his moments there where he, there was a point where he was the number one quarterback in fantasy. And then obviously we know how that season kind of ended. But Greg, is there anybody that we hadn't talked about that, maybe you want to shed some light on, or, for one reason or another, maybe due to injury or something, they didn't end up on this list?
Yeah, definitely Kyler Murray. I mean, he only played 8 games, but he still had a very fine season. I mean, he averaged, believe he averaged 18.3 points, fantasy points per game in his ones that he played. So in 8 games, that's pretty good. That would have made him probably top 12, if he finished that season with all the games he played. So yeah, always thought that was a good ad for those guys that, saw him a couple weeks before he went off IR and needed a quarterback. He kind of rode the ship.
Yeah, I'll also add, Anthony Richardson to that list. He was a breakout candidate for me,
Yep.
and he was averaging about 18 points per game, which would have put him here in this top 12 as well. And Kirk Cousins, who we constantly always talk about in the preseason as being a sleeper, being a guy who is disrespected by the fantasy community or the football community in general. And,
Yep.
he obviously didn't end up on this list because of injury, but he was a top 5 guy,
Yes, sir.
Through those first several weeks of the season prior to that injury there. So I think even the game that he suffered the Achilles injury, he was in the middle of like one of his best games of the year at that point.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. 274 and 2 touchdowns before that injury. So yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, man.
All right, let's move on to the running back position, and it's a little interesting, man. We got 2 usual suspects and one guy who coming into the season probably wasn't on many rosters, but Christian McCaffrey finishes as the running back 1, Kyron Williams as the running back 2, and then Alvin Kamara there finishing as the running back 3. And the criteria here in fantasy points per game was that they needed to play a minimum of 10 games here. So, Greg, what did you think of these top 3 guys here? And obviously, we expected CMC to finish in this spot, but what about I guess the job that he did, and then the 2 guys that finished behind him?
Yeah, CMC, you gotta love it, man. By fantasy MVP, just even though you expected it, he still got it done, which is important for you to take him in most of the drafts, number 1 overall, and for him to be on a lot of championship rosters as well. That's everything you can ask for a fantasy RB, a number 1 pick. So love to see that he continues to get it done, man. One of the best running backs of our generation for sure. Yeah, Alvin Kamara definitely was a super steal for the guys that got him. Thought he was going to be out for a long period of time. He was only out for 2 or 3 games. Came back right away and just started killing right away. But yeah, Kyron Williams, of course, definitely the surprise of the season. Coming in, just every game he played, man, he was putting up absolute numbers or a touchdown.
Yeah, I absolutely love what Kyron Williams was able to do. Obviously, CMC, when you the guy you take number 1, or you take the RB1 and you finishes as the RB1 by 3.2 PPR points per game. Like, yeah, there's nothing you could even remotely complain about there.
Yep.
But Kyron Williams, man, for him to basically go from a guy that was undrafted to a guy that ended up on 70 to 80% of championship rosters, right? And I might even go as far to argue that he was your fantasy MVP because when it mattered the most in week 17, championship week, where was CMC? On the sideline, getting that calf rubbed. You know, where was Kyron Williams? I don't know, in the end zone 3 times.
Mhm.
So, I mean, Kyron Williams, man, I mean, if you were able to leave your draft with CMC and then after week 1, you said, oh, Kyron Williams, let me spend some fab there.
Oh man. Oh man.
It would be you. There's no way you did not finish with a championship. It would be almost
Yeah.
impossible there. But
Yeah.
and then Alvin Kamara, like you said, man. I mean, for him to have the year that he had, I mean, we kind of expected. I don't know if I expected the RB3 finish from Alvin Kamara. I'll be honest, right? I don't know if I expected that, but I definitely expected an RB1 type season, and he came through for us. You know, missed those first 3 games, but after that, you know, he was able to return to, you know, kind of that form that we expected. A lot of thanks to Derek Carr and his, you know, unwillingness to throw the ball down the field at
Yep.
times. So gotta love that there. But rounding out these top 12 here, Raheem Mostert comes in at 4. His teammate Devon Achane comes in at 5. Travis Etienne 6. Jahmyr Gibbs 7. Breece Hall 8. Rachaad White 9. Isaiah Pacheco 10. Saquon Barkley 11. And David Montgomery coming in at 12. Greg, any of these stick out to you?
Yeah, definitely. 2 teams getting 2 running backs, both in the top 12. That's really impressive. Kind of shows the new era also of the NFL. Like not many workhorse guys. You can see that you can have a thunder and lightning and some offenses, and they can still produce in fantasy. So that's good to see. And yeah, Rachaad White, loved him all year, and I'm glad Breece Hall was able to bounce back. Probably would have finished in the top 12 last year. Now he gets his top 12 finish this year.
Yeah, I mean, to hammer that point home with the Lions, right? I mean, I was saying at the beginning of the season, and we'll probably talk about it a little bit later here too, but Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery, I had them both as top 20 backs coming into the year. And, you know, I think early on when they were tilting real hard about
Mm-hmm.
Jahmyr Gibbs, I was like, guys, they can both finish as an RB1, right? Like two things can be true, right? It's going to be an average. We'll look at this. I mean, we won't even remember these games here, you know, at the beginning of the season when Jahmyr Gibbs was barely touching the ball. Like, we will not remember those games. And I promise you that unless you traded Jahmyr Gibbs away after those games, you do not remember them, because all you remember is that middle to end of the season when he basically took over the backfield. And then Rachaad White, man, I mean, his performance in the year kind of reminds me of a quote that Denzel Washington had made, where he was talking about the media and how everyone wants to be first, but nobody wants to be right. Like everyone's, you know, basically trying to report the news first, but you know, they're not reporting it accurate at the sake of reporting it accurately. And that's kind of how I feel in the fantasy community when you see all these tweets. Oh, Rachaad White stinks. Like, he's not good. He's inefficient. Like, that's all people talked about at the beginning of the season. Like, you would think that Rachaad White was not very good based on if you just looked at, you know, what people were saying on social media. And, you know, they were saying the same thing about Isaiah Pacheco. But, like, look at that. Now we've got 2 top 10 running backs here that basically people wanted to throw away after the first 4 weeks of the season, right? I mean, I think we just got to let players, you know, at a certain point, right? We've got to, like, especially younger players, we've got to let them kind of grow into that role, you know, get that groove.
Like, cook up. Yeah.
Rachaad White wasn't used to being, you know, a workhorse back, not at the NFL level, right? So you just got to let the continuity with the offensive line and, you know, everybody learning a new offense. Like, you got to let all of that sink in here. And I think that's what you end up with is, you know, the possibility of, hey, maybe if I hold on to my guys, you know, see what, see what I'm actually seeing, not what people are saying, on social media or on TV or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you end up, potentially with some value here. Yeah, Devon Achane is going to be very interesting next year. I mean, 17.8 PPR points, only played 10 games, was injured for 7 of them. So it really does bring into question, right? Obviously, one of the knocks on him was his size. How effective would he be? Okay, well, we know he's effective. He's very effective, very, very efficient. But the question is he going to be able to hold up over
Yeah.
the course of an NFL season? I think
Yep.
is what we'll need to ask ourselves going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That size will affect that for sure, especially.
Yeah. Moving on to the wide receiver position, or actually, I guess staying at the running back position. Real quick, some honorable mentions: Joe Mixon, James Conner, Jonathan Taylor. 3 guys that I think were values at one point or another, in the fantasy offseason or in draft season, right? Joe Mixon coming off the year where people were unsure if he'd be a workhorse back, and if people thought that he might even get cut from the Bengals. And then James Conner, I don't know what was going on there in the offseason, but his ADP was way too low. And then Jonathan Taylor, just being the questions surrounding his contract and whether he would play for the Colts or if he'd get traded and all these different things definitely impacted his ADP as well. But all 3 of these guys end up coming in as top 15 running backs in PPR points per game.
Yeah, definitely love that. Just wish it was more for Bijan, man. This man deserved more points, man.
Yeah,
No reason.
yeah. Yeah, it's not cool seeing Bijan all the way down there in the 20s there. Brian Robinson, though, that was a nice finish by him.
Absolutely. Yep.
Being able to finish in the top 24 there at the running back position. So you love to see that. And James Cook as well. I mean, it wasn't all great for James Cook. He was actually my running back bust coming into the year. And, for that first quarter or more, I guess 8 games, whenever it was that they had Ken Dorsey calling plays there, it looked pretty on point there. But Joe Brady came in, changed a lot of the way that James Cook used, and he definitely showed a lot of ability, in that role there. So hopefully that continues through these fantasy playoffs and into next season as well. Now moving on to the wide receiver position. The criteria here is the same: minimum of 10 games played, and your number 1 wide receiver in PPR points per game is Tyreek Hill. Number 2 is CeeDee Lamb, and number 3 is Keenan Allen. Greg, thoughts on this wide receiver finish here?
Yeah, I mean, definitely expected kind of the Tyreek Hill thing being number 1. That was definitely nice, especially with Justin Jefferson being banged up a little bit all season. For him to catapult here, he really was on route to getting that 2K. Just some injuries, banged up here and there, but he had a great season. CeeDee Lamb was a touchdown machine. Just really became the workhorse wide receiver in this offense. So, man, it was amazing. And yeah, the fact that people really slept on Keenan Allen all pre-draft and everything, for him to just really dominate, especially early in that season and before his injury, he really did.
Yeah, obviously how I feel about CD. Obviously love that guy. Did not expect the top 3 finish though, for a lot of the reasons I know that I didn't like Dak. Coming into the year, some of that kind of impacted CD as well there.
Mm-hmm.
But was able to have a great season. Obviously, we also had some injuries as well take place, right? Like Justin Jefferson doesn't end up on this list because he only played 9 games. I think he would have been in the top 5 or top 6 there if he was included. But obviously, he was even playing without Kirk Cousins. So what could his year have been had Kirk Cousins been healthy for the whole season? Jamar Chase, dealt with injuries of his own, as well as an injury to his quarterback in Joe Burrow. So that definitely impacted him there as well. So something to definitely note as we look ahead to next year. Any fear of Tyreek Hill potentially slowing down, getting up there in age, has talked about retirement. Don't think he's going to retire this following year, but any thoughts on his ability, or not ability per se, but of him slowing down potentially next year?
Nah, I think he takes his body very seriously. Takes his health. He has also a drive. When he's on the field, he wants to be great. So I see even if he slows down by 10, 20%, this man's still probably one of the top 10 fastest in the league. So yeah, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I tend to agree there. And Keenan Allen, obviously, I was a huge proponent of drafting Keenan Allen. Was talking about that this offseason. What about him? Any potential issues? He's getting up there in age. There's some uncertainty at the quarterback, not the quarterback position, but the head coaching position there for the Chargers as they look for a replacement for Brandon Staley. Any concerns there with Keenan Allen?
No, I mean health would always be maybe a concern, but that's probably a concern for majority of the NFL players. It's football, so I don't think not too much as far as receptions. This man Herbert's going to look his way as the first read, especially with the receivers. The Chargers seem to get. No one really can really touch Keenan Allen's productivity.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing you could really think of is if Mike Williams. I mean, he's obviously he was averaging about 16 points per game to Keenan Allen's, I guess, 21 and a half on the
Mm-hmm.
season. But obviously, that's That's more target competition for Keenan Allen. Not that really matters, right? Like we know who's going to get targeted there, but Keenan Allen was the focal point of the offense for a long time, right? No Mike Williams, Quentin Johnston was not ready.
Yeah,
Josh Palmer got injured. Gerald Everett is Gerald Everett, and
yeah,
Austin Eckler was a shell of himself, at least for 80% of the season. So it was all Keenan Allen here. So
yeah,
would expect some regression there, but not. It would be marginal in my opinion.
yeah. I agree.
Rounding out these top 12s, though, Amon-Ra St. Brown coming in at 4, A.J. Brown 5, Puka Nacua coming in at 6, Mike Evans 7, DJ Moore 8, Jamar Chase 9, Debo Samuel 10, Brandon Ayuk 11, and Michael Pittman Jr. coming in at 12. Greg, what stands out to you here?
Definitely like DJ Moore popping up in here. They brought him over to kind of be that number one guy for Justin Fields, and it worked out, especially for the games that they were both healthy. They had some monster games in there, so we'll hopefully like to see that more next year. We'll see what the Bears do, but with Fields, but that connection I think can really thrive for the future. And Mike Evans, man, Mike Evans was just steady Eddie all year, man. Baker was throwing that thing to him. Had at least one deep ball touchdown. It seemed like every game. Insane for this Hall of Famer right here. So, and I see he's a automatic 1,000, man. Automatic 1,000.
Automatic 1,000 for Mike Evans. Yeah, I think what sticks out to me, obviously Puka Nacua getting in here. I think that's great. I mean, we
Just
were.
sub Cooper Cup for Puka this year. Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, Puka Nacua. I mean, Cooper Cup move over. It's Puka
Yeah,
time.
yeah. Sub them in, yo.
Like, does that mean Puka's gonna be like a top 3 guy next year? Because I was looking, I guess must have been prior to the injury.
Yeah, it
Had
was
Cooper
prior to
Cup
the
in
injury.
here.
Yeah, we had Cooper Cup top 5, and then the hamstring news came out, and then yeah.
I had him at 3. I had Cup at 3 because I was just like, who are they else are they throwing the ball to?
Yeah, yeah.
But apparently his name is Puka. Yeah, Debo Samuel somehow finishing ahead of Ayuk here is it's just crazy to me. I mean, all of that has to be from like Thanksgiving on with
Yeah.
Debo Samuel.
Yeah, it was. He just those rushing touchdowns, those big blowout games that they had. Yeah, starting from kind of I guess that maybe after the bye, kind of he just went off. Yeah,
Yeah, it was that game against Seattle. I remember it was on Thanksgiving. I was like,
Yep.
yeah, Debo Samuel.
Yep.
It must have been like week 12 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he went off. Michael Pittman Jr. I mean, it didn't matter if it was Gardner Minshew or Anthony Richardson, but I would love to see him with Anthony Richardson next year.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then AJ Brown, man. I mean, he showed out. I know that there was a point in the season where he was not, you know, returning at that value that he was, the draft capital that was spent. He was a big buy candidate. I know we were able to trade for him in another league, and definitely enjoyed the fruits of our labor there. But anybody else? I guess Greg. I know that you were a big Nico Collins guy coming in the year. He
Huge. Yeah.
finishes just on the cusp of a wide receiver one season. I'm sure we're going to talk about him a little bit later here, but anybody else that stuck out to you? That's finishing on the cusp of that wide receiver one.
Yeah, I mean, with Tank Dell, his teammate, also kind of almost sneaking in there as well. It's crazy how Jalen Waddle was able to even be relevant this year with the amount of injuries, game in and game out that he suffered. But I'm glad he was able to produce in the time he played. And then the new names, Jaden Reed, and Zay Flowers for sure. Love those guys.
Yeah, Jaden Reed finished as the wide receiver 24 in PPR points per game. So that was, we did not. I mean, we had guys like Rashee Rice or Zay Flowers. I know you were banging a drum for Zay Flowers early. Jordan Addison. I had mentioned Jaden Reed in that first couple weeks of the season. I remember mentioning him, but I will be honest, right? Like, I did not see wide receiver 24 in the range of outcomes.
Yeah, definitely thought that would be Christian Watson, but here we are.
Yep. Moving on to the tight end position, and the tight end one on the year, Travis Kelce, definitely did not feel like it in points per game. Again, it's criteria here: 10 games played. TJ Hawkinson finished as the tight end 2, just barely behind Travis Kelce, and then Sam Laporta, the rookie, finishing as the tight end 3 there. Greg, I guess what stands out to you with these 3?
Yeah, I mean, my tight end one, man, was TJ Hawk, man. It's all you have to do. I think if he played out the season, he would have got his tight end one finish, man. But it's all good. Hopefully he recovers and gets right from his injury. But yeah, Travis Kelce definitely not the gap that we see every year to justify that first round pick, but still a solid season from him. And I think the most hype out of these 3 is definitely Sam Laporta, like coming in for the future. Good to see him in playoffs too. So that'd be definitely great.
Yeah, Travis Kelce, obviously he broke my heart, man. I mean, I was in a keeper league. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like the board's already kind of light. I have the 12th pick. Let me just, slide in here and take Travis Kelce, or actually, I don't think it was a 12th pick. I think it was like a top 5 pick, if I'm being honest. So, and that did not work out well for me. I think I had the usual suspects. I think I had Kelce, then I had Andrews, and then I had Waller as my tight end 3. But Sam Laporta was my breakout, so that was nice to see him up here. And yeah, I have a feeling next year. I mean, Hawkinson did have a great year. Did have the injury to Justin Jefferson, which I think was what pushed him over the edge to get to this point. So I think when we look, and he's obviously battling the ACL tear as well. I really feel like Sam Laporta this time next year will be the tight end 1, and Trey McBride will be right behind him as the tight end 2.
Yeah, when ADP, I would think you got to put in Sam Laporta's got to be in there. With the injury, Hawk will probably be out, and Trey McBride's got to be also in there too. The amount of targets those guys are going to get next season is going to be something you can't argue against.
I mean, the Travis Kelce thing could go either way, right? Like you could say, oh, well, if they get another receiver in there, that can help open up, more opportunities for Kelsey because all teams are just focusing on Kelsey. I mean, Rashee Rice is making it a little bit harder now for teams to do that when he, the way he's playing lately. But you could also argue that another receiver, if the Chiefs are able to, let's say they're able to sign a Michael Pittman Jr., like, do you suddenly feel like Travis Kelsey is going to see a ton of targets in the middle of the field? I don't.
I mean, I think it will help the offense though, which would help Travis Kelsey because I mean he only had 4 or 5 touchdowns this year. Like Kelsey can get to double digits if they are continuously in the red zone, finishing drives. I think that will help Kelsey no matter what.
No, that is a great point. Great point. Rounding out this top 12 here, Mark Andrews coming in at 4, Evan Ingram coming in at 5, George Kittle 6, David Njoku 7. A 2-point drop off here to Cole Kmet, Trey McBride, Dallas Goedert at 10, Jake Ferguson at 11, and Dalton Schultz coming in at 12. This end of this list just really hurt my heart here. Just purely because in one of my leagues, Greg, I think I've talked about it in season. Mm-hmm. I left my auction draft with 2 $1 tight ends, Jake Ferguson and Dalton Schultz.
Oh,
I dropped Dalton Schultz, kept Jake Ferguson. I'm doing the whole dance with Jake Ferguson at the beginning of the year. I'm like, I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
I turn around, I trade away Zach Charbonnet, not so bad. Tank Dell, very bad. For Dallas Goedert, who is the tight end 10 on this list. So basically, I had the tight end 10, 11, and 12 on my roster. I traded away essentially what turns out to be the wide receiver 15 at the time for the tight end 10. So not great use of my resources there. But Greg, anything in this top 12 that really stands out to you?
Not too much. Do like Trey McBride getting in here with points per game and the points, especially considering he wasn't even the starting tight end to start the season. So that's definitely good. And yeah, Dalton Schultz, man, another player that this Texans offense got another top 20 type player. So yeah, definitely nice there. Not too much from tight ends. It is tight ends. I do like how David Njoku finished though. Yeah, he really came on strong towards the end of the season.
Yeah, most definitely. And then there's some Darren Waller had a terrible season. You look at points per game. Dalton Kincaid, I mean, he finished okay. Kyle Pitts did finish higher than Pat Freiermuth, so there's that.
There you
go. But yeah, man, outside of that, the tight end position was kind of a mess, like it always is.
Yeah.
And this is just our reminder to ourselves that when we're sitting there next year saying, "Hey, tight end might be deep," it's never deep.
Yeah, I think we're over the draft the tight end in the first round theories anymore. I guess
for now until somebody goes through the stretch of dominance that Travis Kelsey had for 5-6 years at the position.
Yeah,
we're not going to see that again. I mean, the first tight end off the board probably goes in the second round next year.
Yeah,
just based on when people would rather take the first tight end early than it's more of like supply and demand type deal there. Is Travis Kelsey in your top 3 next year?
I think he would be Willa Porter and probably McBride and Andrews too. I mean, if he's healthy, another year older too. But so
Kelsey's also a year older, and Kelsey's older than Andrews. So
yeah. I think he probably sneak in still. He'll probably it'd be 3. Yeah,
I think he will. I'm going to pull back on my Kelsey because I feel it. It's like this narrative that's building in me that's going to just be here when we sit here next year in 2020 or in 2023 when we sit here to go through the positions. I feel like I'm already building this everybody but Kelsey narrative. So I'm just going to tone it down a little bit. This also, he'll be in there for sure. All right, now it's time to get a little uncomfortable, just a little bit. It's what we got wrong in 23, and I'll start here. I'm sure Greg, we share this one pretty much. It's the Dak Prescott as our collective bust. I mean, I had him outside my top 12. I quote said, I don't see Dak having a QB1 season, and a lot of it was like what we had talked about. I mean, Mike McCarthy fired Kellen Moore because he threw the ball too much, and then proceeded to throw the ball a lot. So the process was basically dependent on Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys not throwing the ball a ton, leaning on Tony Pollard in the run game, and that didn't happen. And so what we saw Dak do was finish as not just a QB1, but inside the top 5 as the QB4 in points per game. I do think it's still interesting that there was I don't know how true this is still, but at some point near the end of the season, I think we were in weeks 15 or 16 at that point, probably week 16, Baker Mayfield had more QB1 finishes than Dak Prescott, and Mayfield finished as the quarterback 13 in points per game based on this criteria here. But anyway, Greg, anything you want to add to the Dak Prescott one?
Yeah, I mean, definitely probably the game plan along with the schedule really helped turn around his season for sure. And yeah, it just shows, what they really wanted to do. But at the end of the day, you gotta in today's NFL, you gotta sling that thing to get some wins.
Yes, sir. What about you, Greg? Anything else that you want to shout out?
Probably is wrong. My young receivers, theories, the Christian Watson and George Pickens, those two really, really broke my heart this season. I thought that both of them would take a true year 2 leap. I mean, Pickens had some moments throughout the end of the season, but it wasn't the consistency we thought we were going to get. To have big games for the Steelers, and especially have at least a consistent wide receiver too. Didn't even get that. He was just very up and down. And Christian Watson battling injuries all year and not even being the number 1 receiver on his team. So yeah, both the young receiver guys for me really did not come through. Zay Flowers, I appreciate you, but Watson and Pickens, man, they let me down, man. I really thought they had some big seasons coming in to 2023.
Yeah, and the thing is, right, is that I can say this because I'm in the League of Extraordinary People with you, Greg, right? Like, this hurt your heart because both those guys were on your roster.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Greg puts it, we all put our money where our mouth is, but Greg, like, every guy that he talks about on this show ends up on his team in the League of Extraordinary People. Most of them end up on his team.
Yeah.
And so he rides or dies with them, man. And sure enough, his team, did a little dying this year.
Yep.
Yeah, George Pickens, that one was interesting because I think we both. I didn't have faith in Kenny Pickett, and the preseason kind of made me change my mind a little bit because he had looked so good in the preseason. I had to remind myself that it's the preseason next time that happens. But George Pickens, I think I had always said, and I think you agreed too, Pickens will probably lead the team in yards, and Deontay will lead the team in receptions. And let me see if that actually came to fruition here. Oh no, because Deontay missed some games. Yeah, he did.
Yeah, they both missed some games. I mean, you probably do something like an average receptions or
4 games there. But if I just some math.
Yeah, you probably do like average, maybe.
Oh, Pickens didn't miss any games. Yeah, Deontay would have been
games
on pace for more. Yeah, no. If you take his average receptions and then multiply that by 17 games, he would have had 66 receptions to George Pickens 63. I mean, it felt like times that he didn't play some games. I mean, there was the week he had negative points, right, or negative receiving yards.
Yep.
But yeah, I guess moving on to what else I got, because this impacted my next stack and my guy, which just feels gross saying it out loud. I completely forgot that he was a my guy for me. But I do remember having him as a top 5 running back. It seems like that season, the beginning of the season seems like forever ago. But I was, again, sure that Mike McCarthy would establish the run and lean on Tony Pollard. But I have to admit, man, Tony Pollard did not look like he was able to be that workhorse back. I saw some interesting comps out there with comping him to like Lamar Miller. I don't know if you remember that name, Greg.
Wow. Yeah.
Where, he was a guy who was explosive as the second running back, the backup running back, got an opportunity to shine a year in Miami, and then Houston paid him a ton of money to be their workhorse running back, and he was not able to do it. Was not able to be that guy, and that's what it's kind of looked like with Tony Pollard, at least in this first year of him being the guy.
Yeah. Hopefully he can have a bounce back next year.
What about you, Greg? What's next on your list?
I mean, I guess the entire fantasy community with Austin Eckler having him wrong as a player that I share it with everybody. So that
I'm not claiming that one, bro. Like, we all had that, right? It's like, that's like if we were going to claim Patrick Mahomes, like everybody had Patrick Mahomes in the top 5, right? Like, if you said Austin Eckler is going to be a bust this year, you should be getting that. That should be something you got right.
Yeah, true. That's true.
It's not something we got wrong here. I mean, we got it wrong, but I wasn't standing on a hill saying it by myself.
It's crazy. It just really, I feel like we just got to talk about it for sure, though, that he, was a big, some teams, those rare teams that picked Austin Eckler over CMC. I'm sure they're really,
I mean, there's a whole segment here for Austin Eckler.
Oh,
we'll get to it. You'll know it when you see it. You'll know it when you see it. But I will take some. I will, Bijan as a top 3 running back for me. That was something that I know probably a lot of people had it. I mean, he was top 3, top 5 for most people, but I had him as top 3. That one, I'll never forgive you, Arthur Smith. Zach Charbonnet, I had as my sleeper running back. He finished. I said he would be in the top 40. He finished outside the top 40. Wasted a lot of weeks on my roster with Zach Charbonnet there.
Yeah, Alexander Madison was a guy I thought would be a good sleeper too. And he didn't really come through at all season. I think he had maybe one big game, and that was it.
Garrett Wilson being a top 6 receiver for me. I mean, that one was kind of the injury to Aaron Rodgers.
That's like.
But I'm still gonna mention it. But there is one. Kyle Pitts as my tight end 6, and my guy, and basically any other time that I brought him up on this show.
Oh man, yeah. I'm hoping the next coach. You always say the next coach is going to do the opposite of what the current coach is. I think this next coach has got to use his stars, man. He knows that we're out for him. Like, he's gonna have to force feed his stars the ball.
Look, man, I'm just saying. Kyle Pitts came out on Instagram, said he was playing through MCL, PCL. You got the Arthur Smith factor, you got the quarterback factor. I'm just saying. Don't be surprised if I come back here next year talking about Kyle Pitts. Just saying. I'm just saying.
Year 4.
Hey, man. David Njoku took him like 7 years to break out.
Yep.
So why not Kyle Pitts?
Yeah, why not?
And then Another one I'm gonna take a little bit. I'm gonna take some blame for, mainly because I wish I did it across all my roster. Not going hard after Kyron Williams, man. I did not go hard after Kyron Williams one bit. I mean, granted, Cam Akers was still in the picture at the time. I remember thinking that week one might have been due to game script, but it was not, man. Kyron Williams ended up being the workhorse back, and I was looking at across all my rosters, all my teams, just being like, this team could really use a Kyron Williams.
Yep. Absolutely. I mean, I definitely wish I had at least just one roster with Kyron Williams.
I did have one.
That's nice.
When you have like 20 fantasy leagues, that's not really, that's like 5%. So, anything else on this category that you want to get off your chest, Greg?
No, just my receivers need to do better next year.
Yeah. I mean, look, in season, there's a lot of stuff that we got wrong too, but we took accountability for it on the spot most of the time. So, not going to go through all the in-season misses here, but this was mostly try to get the off-season stuff off of our chest. But now time to get into what we got right here in 2023. And Greg, why don't you kick it off, man? What did you get right this year?
I know I did have some busts that went right. Specifically Jared Jeudy. Definitely, I know his ADP was going around a good number pre-draft season, and he really didn't come through, especially in a bounce back season for Russell Wilson. And this Denver offense was not as bad as as last year as well. Jared Jeudy just wasn't involved at all. Didn't really have the season that he probably thought he would have. Proving Steve Smith right every day, and Cortland Sutton coming out and being kind of the number one receiver for this team was definitely nice to see. So yeah, that was probably the one thing that was as far as bust that I wanted to mention that I got right for sure.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with quarterback superlatives. Not all of them, just a couple here. Anthony Richardson is my breakout, and I will take credit for that, man, because it was gonna happen.
Yeah.
It was there. And then Russell Wilson as my sleeper, finished inside the top 12 in fantasy points per game. Had some moments where he was stream worthy there, so definitely like that. And then at running back, Jahmyr Gibbs is my running back breakout. Called him. This was an exact quote from the episode: a souped-up version of Swift in terms of athleticism and his ability as a pass catcher. Had him ranked as my RB11 on the season, and he finishes as the RB7. So hopefully, and then I even stood pat when those first 3-4 games of the season, when people were panicking. I was like, guys, listen, like, this is the NFL. David Montgomery is a good running back. Like, let's just stand pat here. And yeah, I'm glad I did.
Yeah. And, especially with the early waivers. Nico Collins, man, definitely a big fan of him, especially from how he finished last season.
Wasn't he your breakout?
I think it was a sleeper of mine. Yeah, I think it was a sleeper. My breakout had to been like
your breakout
Watson.
Was Pickens.
Yeah,
or Watson.
Yeah, one of those there. Yeah,
but
Nico Collins
was. Yeah, I remember you talking about Nico Collins in that wide receiver episode.
For sure. So yeah, him coming through. Didn't know the quarterback situation would even elevate him to higher new heights. But yeah, he really came through, and I'm very excited to see what he's gonna do in the next 4 or 5 years, man. With Stroud, hopefully they keep that tandem together. I'd love to see it there.
Yeah, most definitely. I will actually stay with the wide receiver position, as I got 3 of my 4 wide receiver superlatives pretty much hit them on the money, and one of them comes at your expense, Greg. So I'm sorry, but Christian Watson was my wide receiver bust coming into the year. Jordan Addison was my sleeper. I had him ranked as he finishes as the wide receiver 32. I had him ranked as the wide receiver 30. His ADP was wide receiver 37. So maybe not as high of a hit there, but when you consider the fact that what it could have been had we had Kirk Cousins for the whole season, definitely could have had much better output from Jordan Addison all year. And then last but not least, Keenan Allen is my guy. That was, I quote from that episode, we get so wrapped up sometimes in injuries, but Allen is a guy that has top 5 wide receiver upside, and he was going off the board at the time as the wide receiver 19, finishes as the wide receiver 3 in PPR points per game. Obviously, Jefferson and Chase had, things to deal with on their end, and Keenan Allen, was a beneficiary of some things breaking his way to be able to finish as a top three guy. But like I said, top 5 wide receiver upside, and he gave that to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And then probably these aren't fantasy awards, but I mean they do impact fantasy. I think we did MVP, offensive player of the year, and defensive player of the year. My guys were for MVP Lamar Jackson, offensive player CMC, and defensive player of the year TJ Watt. So I'm pretty sure that's how it's gonna end up being when the awards come out. 3 for 3. I should have put in some bets for that for sure.
Oh man, Greg, you most definitely should have.
Yeah.
I got a few more on this list. One off-season one, and then 2 in-season. Sam Laporta as my breakout tight end. Obviously, that one pretty much hit on the head. He finishes the tight end 3. And then, look, episode 1 or the first waiver wire show, I was banging the drum for Puka. Saying I'd go hard after him. If you looked at if you played in the league with me, there was a strong chance you did not have Puka because he was on my roster. And I even doubled down on that. I doubled down on it when Cup came back from his injury. People were willing to sell Puka. I said, no, guys, let's not sell Puka. Let's not trade him. Like he's here to stay.
Yep.
And then last but not least, the Stroud family, the Stroud boys. We were on Stroud early, man. I mean, week 3 called on him to be my quarterback stream of the week against Indianapolis. And we never looked back.
Yep. He's gonna be here. He's here to stay. He's definitely gonna be in my top 10 at least next year.
Oh, most definitely. And I do remember saying, I said it many, many times, I'm getting some rookie year Herbert vibes.
Yeah. Yep.
And here we are. All right, Greg, fantasy MVP, man. Who is it?
I gotta go with CMC just because the expectations that will put into him, and for him to come through, it's like not a lot of people can. Not that he's gotten probably filling fantasy expectations, but player expectations, and the whole fantasy community putting that in him to be the number 1 overall pick, and for him to finish kind of as the number 1 running back, be in that putting up quarterback numbers as far as total points in fantasy. Man, he did it. He did what he had to do. I think he led all players in fantasy points per game. That's for him to finish that. That's what the MVP does. Most valuable player for a lot of teams on championship teams.
Hey man, I can't argue with this one, but I got to give some love to Kyren Williams, man. I have to. Maybe this is me compensating for not having had him on my teams or on both of my teams, or not pounding the drum for him in week 1. But again, like I said, championship week against the Giants, when you needed him the most, 3 rushing touchdowns there, 30 PPR points, finish as the RB1 on the week. I mean, there's not much you could say there. When a guy goes from literally undrafted on your waiver wire to helping you win a championship, like you remember guys like that forever.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And unfortunately, we always remember the guys that let us down. So, Greg, fantasy Jag of the year.
Yeah, I feel like the obvious is Austin Eckler. Yes, it is. I'm trying to think of another name besides him that we could talk about that was highly. But nah, it's not. There's no other name.
It's Austin Eckler. Like, it can't be anybody else. Nobody else you drafted let you down more. Nobody you drafted that high let you down. This more like I'm an Austin Eckler manager. My team, if it wasn't for Jahmyr Gibbs, CJ Stroud, Puka Nacua saving my roster, Austin Eckler would have sunk my League of Extraordinary People team.
Right.
Would have sunk it.
Yeah. Now I'm trying to think of the first round picks. Even Saquon still finishes a top 12 guy. A lot of these running backs still did what they have to do. Even Bijan still put up points at least. It was man, Austin Eckler, man. I feel like he was so safe. It was so safe. So it's crazy.
What it felt like, but that was not what we got. It was not what we got.
Yeah.
So that pretty much puts a bow on the 2023 NFL season for us. It's obviously bittersweet because we don't get to sit up here and talk about start sits and the games as much. But, our offseason is coming. I know we didn't do a lot of offseason stuff last year, as I know I personally was dealing with a lot of stuff. But we are back. We're back. I will be back doing dynasty-centric shows, going through rookie rankings at quarterback, all the different positions, wide receiver, running back, tight end, giving out the results of my model and how I see this class being ranked, and bringing on a lot of guests from the community. I know Greg obviously is going to go, and basketball is life, and we won't see him as much as you do it here every day, but definitely we'll want to bring him back to discuss some dynasty stuff as the season goes on. Until we're back on here in August breaking down fantasy football, but obviously going to try to continue to grow the show. Hopefully get some fantastic guests on here. Definitely got one queued up for y'all coming up in the these next few weeks. So just want to tease that. But Greg, anything you want to say to the people as we get ready to close this one out?
Yeah, man. I mean, very excited for Dynasty. I mean, big quarterback class coming in. So sad, the Giants might not be able to get one, but it's all right. We'll look forward to the players that coming in. Yeah, and I finally have a really high pick for Dynasty. So yeah, I definitely want to be paying attention to the draft and everything going on here. So yeah, let's do it.
Most definitely, y'all. But until next time, feed will probably be quiet for the next couple weeks. I might get on here, talk through some playoff stuff, talk through some Super Bowl stuff. Maybe that week between the championship conference championship games as well as the Super Bowl. Maybe I'll get on here and do some things, but kind of play it by ear. But the feed will not be empty for 7 months. We will get stuff on here rolling out pretty regularly, probably once a month, once every 2 weeks. Something, so maybe that'll be the cadence here. But we'll be live again. We'll keep doing all this stuff and having a great time here. So until next time, y'all, enjoy football, enjoy the playoffs, and we will see y'all again soon. Have a good one, everybody. We're out of here. Peace.
Yeah.